everybody, and welcome back to another All the Talk, All the Sports podcast. I'm your host, Gary Wenzel, and I'd like to thank you from whatever platform you're listening to from, whether it be Spotify, Spreaker.com, or YouTube. You can also find us on All the Talk, All the Sports on Instagram. And today's episode, I am going to be ranking Big Ten basketball teams from the 2019-2020 season based on a lot of different things, records, in-conference records, potential, points per game, stats, you name it. I'm going to be doing this in a series from 6 different leagues. The Big Ten will lead us off, then we'll go to the ACC, the SEC, the Big 12, the Pac-12, and the Big East. They will not be in any specific order, and they will not be back-to-back episodes. I'll mix in different episodes on the podcast in between them. This is not going to be all this in a row. So, to start, let's talk about our This Day in History sports segment. There was not that many facts for this day in history on April 23rd, but the first Major League Baseball game was completed under the lights as the Phillies beat the Braves 6-5 in 1950. That was really the only interesting fact that was on this day in history and sports. So as we move out of that, let's move right into the Big Ten basketball rankings for the 2019-2020 season. Leading us off at number 14, the Nebraska Cornhuskers out of Lincoln, Nebraska. They did not have a great season at all. Their record was 7-25, and their Big Ten record was 2-18. That says a lot about the team right there. Some facts that we have for them. They had a 17-game losing streak to end the season. They beat Iowa 76-70. That was their really only notable win. That was on January 7th, and that was their last win of the season. And they went 0-12 on the road. So they had a total of 7 wins in Lincoln, no wins outside of the state of Nebraska. That is not a good season for the Nebraska Cornhuskers, just a disappointing season. But moving down to number 13, we have the Northwestern Wildcats out of Evanston, Illinois. Not any better than the Nebraska Cornhuskers. They had one more win. Their record was 8-23, and their Big Ten record was 3-17. They beat Nebraska 2 times, so they obviously got the ranking higher than them. But a notable win they had was they beat the number 20 at the time, Penn State Nittany Lions, 80-69. That was by far their biggest win of the season. Just a depressing season for those two teams. Moving to number 12, we have the Minnesota Golden Gophers out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Their record was 15-16, a much better season than the two previously mentioned. Their Big Ten record was 8-12. This just goes to show you the depth that the Big Ten has. They have a lot of teams, I'd say 12 teams that are constantly competing with each other for top 5 spots and a chance to get it to March Madness. Minnesota had some big Big Ten wins. They beat Ohio State twice. They beat Penn State 75-69. They beat Wisconsin 70-52. And they beat Northwestern 74-57 in the Big Ten tournament before it got cut off due to the certain situations that we're going through right now. But they were in every game. That's the one thing about this Minnesota team. They never got blown out. They were just competitors. They have young talent. They'll be a great team, a top-tier team in the Big Ten in a couple years. I can see the potential in this team. Moving down the list to number 11, we have the Purdue Boilermakers out of West Lafayette, Indiana. Their record was 16-15, over 500 there. The 11 teams in the Big Ten have an over 500 record. Their Big Ten record was 9-11. They are usually a good team that makes runs, so on Purdue standards, this was not a very good season. They usually make it to March Madness and maybe even the Sweet 16 or Elite 8. They beat the number 5 and the defending national champions, Virginia 60-49. That was probably their biggest win of the season. That was earlier on. They beat a good Iowa team twice. They beat the number 8 Michigan State Spartans 71-42. That was a blowout against a really good team. And they're 18th in the nation for scoring defense, giving up 62.6 points per game. That's really good. That's one thing about the Big Ten is they have a great defense, the low-scoring games in the Big Ten. Moving on to another team out of Indiana, the Indiana Hoosiers out of Bloomington, Indiana. Their record was 20-12, and their Big Ten record was 9-11. They beat Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan State, and Iowa. They beat a lot of good Big Ten teams. They also beat Nebraska 89-64 in the Big Ten tournament game. Most teams did not get to play a Big Ten tournament game, but they were one of the few that did, and that was their final. Moving down to number 9, the Rutgers Scarlet Knights out of Piscataway, New Jersey. Their record was 20-11. Their Big Ten record broke 500, 11-9. They beat Wisconsin, a good team up there in Wisconsin. They beat them 72-65, and they beat the Penn State Nittany Lions 72-61. They also beat in-state rival Big East top-tier team Seton Hall Pirates 68-48, utter domination in that game. They were 18-1 at home, and their only loss coming to Michigan. I'd say Rutgers had a pretty good season. They're going to keep having consistent seasons over the next few years, and they're just an all-around, well-shaped team. Moving on to number 8 is the Michigan Wolverines out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. Their record was 19-12. Their Big Ten record was 10-10, about 500. Well, exactly 500. They beat the number 16 Michigan State Spartans 77-68, a big in-state rival win for the Wolverines. They don't have as many Big Ten wins, Big Ten wins as they like. They were pretty consistent, but on Michigan standards, they're usually its Final Four team in the talk. This was not a good season at all. I didn't even see them, if they played March Madness, I don't even see them making out of the round of 32. They beat UNC number 6 when they were good, but then they took a flop in the season, 73-64. They beat number 8 Gonzaga early in the season. That's a good win. Gonzaga's a really good basketball team. They beat them 82-64, and an honorable mention loss to the number 10 Oregon Ducks as they hosted them. They lost 71-70 in overtime. I remember watching that game. The Ducks hit a buzzer beater 3 to send the Michigan Wolverine fans home devastated. Moving on to number 7, halfway through, the Penn State Nittany Lions. They had a pretty good season as they did the year before. They went 21-10 with a Big Ten record of 11-9. They beat the number 6 Maryland Terrapins 76-69. They beat Ohio State 90-76, and they beat the number 16 Michigan State Spartans 75-70. They had a pretty good season up there in State College, Pennsylvania. Before we move on to the number 6 team, I just want to say that the Big Ten is such a consistent conference with a lot of teams competing. To show you this, 9 of the 14 Big Ten teams had a Big Ten record over 500. That's really good. That means you could say 9 teams were all competing for some top-tier spots and some high seedings in the Big Ten tournament. Now we move on to the number 6 seed, the Iowa Hawkeyes out of Iowa City. They went 20-11, and their Big Ten record was 11-9. They beat the number 12 Texas Tech Red Raiders 72-61 early in the season. They had a lot of Big Ten wins this season. They beat the number 12 at the time Maryland Terrapins 67-49. They beat Wisconsin 68-62, and they beat Illinois 72-65, as well as Ohio State. They beat them 85-76. They had a great season in Iowa City. Like Minnesota, they have some young talent. You'll see them climbing up the ranks over the next few years. Moving on to the top 5. At 5, I have Ohio State Buckeyes out of Columbus, Ohio. They went 21-10 and 11-9 in Big Ten. A lot of the same records here. They started off 10-0, a really, really great team. They were highly ranked. They beat the number 8 Kentucky Wildcats 71-65. That was their biggest win of the year. They lost games they should have won. That was their main problem in their Big Ten season. But they did beat the number 7 Maryland Terrapins 79-72, and they beat the number 23 Illinois Fighting Illini 71-63. They had a pretty decent season. Ohio State's a pretty consistently good team, always right in it. Moving to number 4, we have the Illinois Fighting Illini out of Champaign, Illinois. They went 21-10 and 13-7 in Big Ten play. They beat teams they were supposed to beat. That's always a good sign. They beat Wisconsin 71-70. They had a pretty easy schedule, but they had a good season on Illinois standards, Illinois sports standards, so they were number 4, had a good Big Ten record. At number 3, we have the Wisconsin Badgers out of Madison, Wisconsin. Their record was 21-10, and their Big Ten record was 14-6. They ended their season on an 8-game win streak. They were 15-1 in Madison at the Kohl Center. They beat number 17 Maryland 56-54 earlier in Big Ten play. They beat the number 14 Michigan State Spartans 64-63, and they're 13th in the nation on scoring defense, top scoring defense in the Big Ten. They only gave up 62.2 points per game. Moving on to the Michigan State Spartans, they're number 2 in my rankings out of East Lansing, Michigan. Their record was 22-9, and their Big Ten record was the same as Wisconsin's at 14-6. Great season, coached by Tom Izzo. They were top-tier Big Ten, always in the top 10, hanging around, competing with teams nationally. They beat the number 12 Seton Hall Pirates early in the season, 76-73. They were a very dominant Big Ten team. You did not want to play the Spartans in East Lansing, Michigan. They also beat the number 9 Maryland Terrapins 78-76, and they ended on a 5-game win streak. They had a great season. They got cut short, obviously, but I think next year they'll come back better than ever. I could see them being a top 4 team at the end of the season. The number 1 team on my ranking list for the Big Ten 2019-2020 basketball teams is the Maryland Terrapins. Their record, they went 24-7, 2 games ahead of the Michigan State Spartans. A great record, a great Big Ten record at 14-6. They played outstanding games. They beat a lot of teams, a lot of good teams. The average teams in the Big Ten, they beat everyone they were supposed to. They went 16-1 in College Park, Maryland, and they were definitely a potential Final Four team if they did not win the national championship. That will wrap up our top 14. Since there's 14 teams in the Big Ten, that will wrap up our Big Ten basketball rankings from the 2019-2020 season. I'd like to thank you for listening. And also, make sure to tune in to the NFL Draft tonight, 8 p.m., ABC and ESPN. That will be exciting to watch, some of the only live sports that we have to discuss. So with that being said, thank you for watching. Have a great day. And please like and subscribe if you're on YouTube, or if you're on Spotify and Spreaker. Please follow and download. Have a great day, everybody.